This is the chart for the full moon on January 17th, and we're going to look at it from an astrological perspective so that we can see in space what constitutes a full moon. And then we're going to go into the gene key chart and look at the themes there. So in this chart, you see the astrological wheel with the astrological signs around the wheel. And inside of that wheel, we have all the gene keys, all the gates. So you can see that the opposition that's happening right now between the moon and the sun, which makes up the full moon, is happening in gate 60 and gate 56, Cancer and Capricorn. The moon loves to be in Cancer because it has to do with nurturing, the emotional waters, the inner, feeling home. And then the sun is in Capricorn. It has to do with the outer, our role in the outer world, society, societal structures. So it's an opposition between the outer and the inner, the emotional and more of like the outer responsibility that we might have. What's making this extra strong is that we have Pluto together with the sun, and that's only happening once a year because Pluto is so slow, takes 248 years to go around the wheel, and the sun is coming around once a year. So for the last few years, the sun has been meeting Pluto here in Capricorn. And we have seen this since the beginning of 2020, when we had that great conjunction in Capricorn in gate 61 with Pluto, with Saturn and Jupiter, that a lot of things are happening when it comes to society and the structures that we were relying on. And a lot of it has felt like limitation. And it's interesting because actually gate 61 is not limitation. It is inspiration more than anything. But 60 is limitation. And it's the last gate before the Rave New Year. The Rave New Year, the start codon, is the 41. And here we are with Pluto in the very last gate. This is also the Pluto return for the United States. So a lot of things that have to do with structure, societal structures, is going to change. What is this opposition about right now? Well, it is to look at limitations and see, I believe, what are the true limitations and what are the false limitations or the false beliefs about limitations. And I think that the moon here in the 56, and we call this archetype the comedian, is actually asking, what's nurturing me? How can I work on this side with the inner planes and my close relationships and my home in the things that nurture me? What role do I want to play? The comedian can play many roles, can decide many different ways of enriching their own life. So that when things are happening, coming up to the surface, Pluto has to do with transformation, death, and rebirth. And it's connected to Scorpio. So it's going to be intense. It's going to go deep. It's going to draw up secrets, and especially now with the moon fully illuminated and the sun together with Pluto, there can be revelations that we maybe weren't expecting or that we were waiting for that suddenly come up, because they need to come up before we are going to move into the Rave New Year through the sun, which is going to happen very soon in just a week. But then we also have in the next few years Pluto moving on to something new, going into Aquarius, speaking about the Aquarian age and where we are going as collective, as humanity. And here we also see that right now we have the Jupiter and the Saturn that were here together with Pluto last year. They're already moving on and opening up to what's coming. So from here, I actually feel like I want to go into the gene keys, because I know that most of you are more familiar with the gene keys than with the astrology. But it's important to see, like I was saying before, we have programming partners. This is the sun right now. This is the earth. And together with the earth in a full moon, that's where we have the moon. So this is the challenge. This is the opposition that is highlighted right now during the whole full moon. So in this chart, we can see it as a snapshot of what are the results that have there that we can see. The full moon is once a month, and it also always have us look at the results. It's a moon phase that is closing. So in the new moon, we have the possibility to set intentions, to to start to build towards the full moon. And then in the full moon, we see the results of what worked and what didn't work. When we look at together the chart that was here, I think that when we're working the emotions here together with Cancer and Capricorn, it has to do with emotional maturity. It has to do with taking responsibility as well for both the inner and the outer. And how is the comedian going to respond? What role is he going to play? What play is he going to be the main character of? So for me, when we have Capricorn and Cancer, I would say it is about emotional maturity in what's happening, and to go out of possibly the victimization that we can't have freedom. You see here, we have Jupiter, which is the law in the 55, that can either go into the shadow of victimization or the gift and the city of freedom. So for me, are you going to expand into your freedom, or are you going to feel like stuck in a victimization that's just going to grow and grow because it's Jupiter? And we see that, of course, in the gene keys with this magical number of the 55.5 in the pearl. And it's also connected to the other Jupiter, because remember, when we look at astrology, we are just seeing a snapshot of what's there right now. When we go into the gene keys, we're going to see a very interesting combination of what's activated right now and what was activated 88, 89 days ago. The gene key chart is always a combination where we have right now in life's work and evolution, and we have 3 months ago in radiance and purpose. Here we also have 3 months ago. Then we have the IQ and the EQ, Venus and Mars right now. But here we have Venus and Mars 3 months ago. And Jupiter, we're going to have the current Jupiter and the Jupiter 3 months ago. So it's its own constellation, we could say, that is showing us a snapshot of what's happening here on January 17 in the full moon. So the pearl, the essence of this full moon, is about freedom. And it's powerful because the 5th line is about leadership. It's about impact. It's that pinnacle of the hexagram, the strongest of all lines. So it's asking you, are you stepping up to your freedom, or are you dwelling and kind of expanding your feeling of victimization? That's the essence. The pearl is always the holy grail or the essence. So liberation is a big word. And we're seeing here an evolution is the earth position now. On earth, we're speaking about it right before. If you're the comedian, the 56, are you dancing? Can you be natural in the place where you are deciding to nurture? Do you have enrichment in that everyday life? And the second line is telling us that this is mostly going to happen in relationships, in close relationships. And it's telling you can be picky. So part of embodying this essence in a high frequency is when this challenge here is taken care of. So looking at the current limitations that are there, or the current structures, not necessarily limitations, like the structures of your home, the structures of your work lives, the structures that are around you. How can you decide to play a role as the comedian that enriches you, and where you have passion with those few people that you have picked to have close to you? The second line is always picky. We sometimes call it the hermit because it doesn't want to play with everybody. What are the deeper layers of this? Where do we find our core stability given this opposition, these things that are pulling on us? Well, we are looking at the 50 and the 3. So here it's about inner harmony, inner equilibrium, telling us it's so important that you find your inner equilibrium. How is that going to happen? It's going to happen through 2 things: friendships. So going back to here, who is it natural for you to nurture with? These are the people that you want to have around you. And the other thing that's important for your core stability is your breath. And it's also to have this mind of a child. And here we have another very interesting thing. If you're into human design, you're going to see that the 60 and the 3, so this is the life's work, the sun where it is right now, this is the sun, this is the earth where it was 3 months ago. They together are creating this channel from the root to the sacral, the 360, which is the pulse of life, which is about your individual life force, your kundalini. That's what we have the purpose in the life's work right now. So it is coming in to your body and knowing that the creativity that you have, it's not something that you can plan for. It's something that's there, and there are going to be limitations, but there's also a way that you can be this innocent child that's always ready to play and that's always ready to innovate. Because when you are ready to innovate, that's when you can go outside what feels like a limitation. So the core stability comes from finding inner equilibrium, being with a few people that you feel trust and passion with, and then grounding in this archetype, which is the eternal child that can always play. And I can see that with children, they don't need much to play with. They can make toys of anything when they don't have toys. And that is what we want to ground into right now, the breath and the innocence of who we are. That's the inner. What is the core wound that we're working on? What is it that in this full moon, the deeper wounding that can be shown to us, because we said everything is illuminated, what can come up to the surface and be worked? This is very interesting. This actually is my Pluto. It's a Libra gate, so it also has to do with equilibrium, very connected here to the radiance. This is the false belief that we fail. Because what is failure at the end of the day? All the failures that ever happened kind of led us to where we are right now. And there is a point, a meaning with where we are. So the false belief that we can let go of, that's going to allow us to have more freedom, is how we perceive failure. Let us look at it here so you can actually see the key notes of the core wound. So here we're looking at it. So this belief that we fail, and then the feeling guilty that we did the wrong thing, we failed. That can perpetuate and go around and around. I always speak about in natal charts. This is a transit chart, but in natal charts, I always speak about the connection between the core and the IQ. So your mind is going to struggle forever, having all the logic, all the practical explanations for why you should continue to beat yourself up about the failures. And these are not only your failures. The fifth line is karmic. So it's always going to, it's transpersonal, because it's always going to include the other. So it's going to go round and round and round about your own failures and other people's failures. And that's a struggle that can never end. And we have a fifth line in both of these. So it's a struggle of the mind where the relationship with the other is just going to be more and more complex. They're going to be more conflicts and more misunderstandings. And the mind is going to make yourself right, I believe, in the 38. It's going to make yourself right. It's going to say that you can persevere, it's going to give you the energy, this is a root gate, to not actually surrender to and feel into the core wound, but actually perpetuate this fifth line guilt theme, and that somebody did the wrong thing. So those things can never open up into the 55 and the freedom. And part of the way that we can work with the Venus sequence is that when we are stuck in the loop of the mind, which perpetuates the core wound, we want to include the SQ, the EQ, and the attraction. So what we are including here is to surrender, is to give ourselves enough time to feel into the body instead of having the mind going round and round. So give yourself time and space during this full moon. Emotionally, you don't want to check out, because this moon, like we were saying, it is in Cancer, and it has all to do with emotional waters. So the worst thing you can do right now is to check out emotionally. You want to look at them, and possibly when you dare to be in them, like we were saying with opposition with Cancer and Capricorn, there is a way that you can relate your own emotions that is more mature And this is perfect because this goes together with the journey that we're doing in the inner circle. We're right now in the solar plexus center, which is a lot about not identifying with a wave of emotions. The third line has this bad habit, we could say, to escape, to not have to feel. But actually, at the end of the day, that kind of, in the long run, brings you into more obscurity. Because when we don't allow the emotions, that's when we are closing the door to part of our genius, to our emotional intelligence. And then when it comes to the attraction, we see a theme that we were seeing in the life's work and the purpose. It's individual circuitry. So this is about your pulse, your electricity, your kundalini. And that's what the attraction speaks about, your unique pulse in the world. You are here to play with your unique rhythm. You are here to be an influencer from your own unique style. So when we add the patience and the space and the body, when we allow the emotions to be felt, whether they are the archetypes of obscurity or the archetypes of light, it doesn't matter. But when we can be with it all, that's when we are actually even can see the humor of it. We're not running away from emotions, and we're not running away from our body, our sexuality, our pulse. We're allowing it to express itself in playfulness. When we add or include SQ, EQ, and attraction, that is when the loop between the mind and the wound can open. So suddenly what comes out of the vocation and the IQ, you see, from failure and guilt, struggle and defensiveness, what we can open up when we include the body, the emotions, and the sexuality is that we see what's worth preserving. What role do I want to play? What do I want to nurture? Is what before when we're looking at the 56, what role comedian do I want to play? What is it that I want to nurture? The moon is here as well, and this is a Cancer gate. So allowing you to choose the things that are worth preserving. And that goes very much together with the 62. Some structures are really good because they allow us, they allow us to grow. We need to have a little bit of structure often in the beginning, and then we can grow past the structure. But the 32 and the 60 are kind of conservative in that sense. They're like, okay, let us have the banks of the river here first. And then once we have the process, we can kind of get rid of the banks and we can be roam completely free. So looking at what's worth preserving. And then with the 38, it is to use your fuel for a fight that's worth it. That's the only way that you can feel honor when you're done. And it's really a fight where you come closer to the essence. A fight that leads to freedom and not to more limitation, not to more reaction, not to more darkness, not to more distraction, intoxication, not to more imbalance, and not to more chaos. You know, that's the kind of fight that's the kind of gladiator you want to be. So the core wound that we are looking at and solving is the mind's addiction of thinking that something is wrong, guilt and failure. And going past that false belief and include more of all the parts of ourselves, the body, the emotions, the life force. And that's what can create a revolution in the way that we are collaborating, in the way that we connect, in the network that we are here to influence others through. This is actually a codon ring. The 55 and the 49 is the codon ring of the whirlwind. So a lot of things are blowing, a lot of things are happening. And when we look at this chart in the low frequency, now in the beginning of the year and very close to Rave New Year, and we look at the lower frequencies, you can see kind of what nightmare this is. You know, it's the limitation that's there in the outer in Capricorn, the limitations in society. And there is a lot of distraction because we don't really want to feel fully the darkness and the light and everything there is. So we are going to third line, run away into distractions. We don't have to feel that. At the end of the day, that can just lead to more struggle and to more victimization, and to not really dare to give us time to feel and dare to give us time to be, uniquely who we are. And then there is no core stability. We are just going to feel kind of chaos and corruption, and that we can't do anything about it. However, if we can in this moment decide what's worth nurturing, what's worth preserving, how can I find more equilibrium on the inside? How can I have more innocence and more trust actually in what's happening? The 55 is also part of what Richard is using to speak about the times that are coming, and where we have the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly. So there is going to have to be things on the outer that is changing. And the important thing while it happens is to not get lost in the mind, so that we forget that we are more than our mind. We are also our body, our emotions, and our life force. So when we can ground in all these parts of who we are, all the outer metamorphosis can happen. And with the full moon, like we were saying before, Capricorn, Cancer, emotional maturity through what's happening is going to be important. The right people that you are choosing and picking are going to be important. Your breath is going to be important. So this is actually very kind of advanced, but I still wanted to give you the breakdown of how we can use the human design gene key way of looking at a specific point in time and see what's the learnings, what's the possibilities with this chart. What is this chart? What is this moment in time, this full moon asking us to do? What's the core wound that we can transcend if we completely dare to live this chart? So thank you so much.